Hey everyone, Stakuya here, and I just wanted to make a very quick video that is covering something that I've been asked about a couple times, and that is how do I create the Space Marine units that I've used repeatedly in a lot of Minor Nation campaigns. Now before I continue with that, I want to clarify what the term Space Marine is, because goddammit, it's not exactly what you're thinking of what it is, but also, you can kind of see where the name comes from. In Hearts of Iron, a Space Marine division is a division that is composed of infantry, but it also has armor units in it. It's something that is giving armor to your infantry divisions, which makes them a lot more tanky. They are literally just Space Marines. Now, in the old days of Hearts of Iron, this was essentially meta, but a lot of stuff that they did with tank design both helped and hurt that. Essentially, it reached a point where in many cases it just wasn't practical. But now it is, at least for the beginning early stages of the game. But even then, it's only really possible with a certain type of tank that is only possible because of No Step Back and the ability to customize and design your own tank. So this Polish attack division that I have created here, you can see this has an armor value of 19.2, which that is huge. A lot of people don't really understand, but where armor and piercing, where this is so important, is that most units in the game are going to have a armor piercing value below 10. So what this means is that if you are aiming for a Space Marine division, if you're going to have something like this, at least having an armor of 10 is going to mitigate most damage that they can take. But for just something slightly more expensive, if you have the industry for it, you can get a significantly higher armor value that allows you to carry forward the Space Marine unit much further into the game than you otherwise would have. Mind you, this is not necessarily something that is going to go up against, medium and heavy tanks in 1941 and 42, but in 39 and 40 and against most infantry divisions, this is going to wipe things out all the way until perhaps 43. First off, let's look at the tank design itself. Now, because of the way that it's used, I like to call this tank the Brick because it's a goddamn brick. It just works. Look at this chunky little boy. And the way that you're going to make this thing is that you are going to use the basic medium tank chassis. If you don't know what I'm talking about, simply go over to your research slot, go over to armor, and you can see it is the 1934 medium tank. One of the tanks that has some of the best armor in the beginning of the game, but is also very cheap. You will need this, plus you will need the first tier of basic armor protection, because this allows you to build welded armor. And that welded armor aspect is huge. You see, if I was just going to create a variant of this tank to show what it is that I'm talking about, the way that you make the brick is like so. For your weapon, you're going to choose simply a heavy machine gun, because soft attack, hard attack, piercing, none of those stats actually really matter in this case. Hell, speed does not matter in this case, because you are looking at making something that is not designed to do damage. It is a brick that is meant to be a wall in front of everything that you're touching. So, heavy machine gun is the cheapest, lightest weapon that you can get. It only costs half a production. It starts off with a medium one-man turret. Nope, we are going to switch this to a light turret for a light one-man turret, because that is going to drop the production cost by, again, half a point. We're now looking at a production cost of 3.6. For special features, depending on what it is that you researched at this time, you are going to more than likely get just one thing, and that is sloped armor. You see, the reason why you're going to get sloped armor is because everything in here, when they're looking at modifiers, there are two different kinds of modifiers for production cost. You either have things that add on a base production cost, like 0.5, adding on 1 or 1.5, etc., or you're going to have percentage modifiers. Now, if you already have a really expensive tank, a production percentage modifier is something that is going to affect you very heavily. But if it's a really cheap tank, then you can take all the bonuses that you want from cheap production modifiers from those percentages, because 1% of 3.6 is 3.64. It's really cheap. So you've just increased your cost by 0.04, but you have also increased your armor by 7. That is a huge, huge difference. You're going to keep bogey suspension because it's stupidly cheap, and then the other one on here that you're going to see is riveted armor. Now again, this is where things don't actually matter as much in this case. Like, riveted armor is going to decrease your production cost by 20%. So that's not bad. That's something that is going to make it astronomically cheaper to produce a lot of this specific tank. But on the other hand, if you just get welded armor, then that is going to increase your value by 40%. And in the end, this tank is only going to cost 4.54 production, and a mere 21 army experience to create. This in total gives a ridiculously weak tank with only 5.5 soft attack, 2 hard attack, 10 piercing. Like, this thing isn't really going to do hardly anything against any other kind of tank or hell enemy infantry. But it's going to have an armor value of 56, which for an early game tank is pretty heavy. And so just a single factory on this is going to give you a start of around 2.5 to 2.7, depending on whatever production you have set into it for here. But it's going to be something that is going to give you around 2 to 3 tanks per week at the beginning. Mind you, this is only slightly more expensive than an artillery piece because artillery pieces have a production cost value of 4. So if you manage to get this tank early and put a single factory on it and start cranking out tanks, this is going to very quickly reach up to its maximum production value, and that means that at 70%, like I'm at here now, you're going to be producing around 5 to 6 tanks per week, almost 1 a day. You can see here with 4 factories on at only 34% efficiency that I'm producing 2 a day right here. If you get that tank early enough as a power that is able to produce oil, then this means that you're going to have a large surplus of tanks that you can start to use to gradually replace your units. And this is where gradual replacement theory comes in. The Polish have a basic infantry division that is fairly common at the beginning of the game, that being an 18-width infantry division, something where you have, these 9 battalions of infantry that are worth 2 each, that gives a combat width of 18. In this case, I've slapped on another infantry to make that a combat width of 20, and then I've added on some more defensive support to help it, like support anti-air, artillery, and engineer company, just something to build a kind of solid defensive unit. In order to create our Space Marine unit, all that you're going to do is create a duplicate of your defense. In this case, we would name it to Attack. We're going to add on an Armored Battalion to change it to Medium Tank. And then we're going to change one of those infantry units to an artillery unit just to give it some additional soft attack. You can see right from the base that what this has done is that it has given us 19.6 armor and 14 piercing, which is pretty solid from the very beginning. That armor means that the majority of the German units are not going to be able to touch us. And then with that piercing, we're going to be able to take out most light tanks. If you simply go over here and add on a support unit of anti-tank, at 31.5, that means just about every German tank here for the foreseeable few years is going to be something that can be easily wiped by us. And then what you're going to do over time, since this is something that is a gradually building industry, that you're not just going to be able to recruit all these units at once, is that you're going to fill your front line with that defensive infantry that is going to be taking up the majority of these blocks. And then over time, what you're going to simply do is on each province that is on the border with Germany, while you're trying to create a defensive line, is you're going to select one of these units that is in at least each block, and you're going to simply go over to it. You're going to change division template, and you're going to change this from defense to attack. You do so, you can see this pops up saying, okay, in order to switch this, we're going to need an additional 800 manpower, 36 towed artillery, 50 medium tanks, 10 support, 24 anti-tank, etc. And what that is going to do is that is going to gradually replace each one. If you can dedicate more factories to these tanks to be able to produce them quicker, you'll be able to field more of these units. But what this is going to do over time is allow you to gradually replace your front line until eventually the entirety of your line has at least one of these units, allowing you to completely hold. Once the actual war with the Germans starts, you will notice that despite the fact that time is going on, the Germans are not attacking us. The reason being is because we have so much armor that is on our front line, their infantry knows that they're not going to be able to win. So now what we've done is created an entire army that is on the northern border of Germany that is composed entirely of Space Marine divisions. And you can see from the get-go that this is just causing them to be immediately pushed and crushed. They're not able to actually resist us. Very quickly, this is going to allow us to encircle and isolate units, which in turn is going to allow us to wipe them out, gradually reducing the German war strength. Of course, you will still need to micro in order to try and protect your front line, but it is now going to be far more doable than anything else would be. And now, while the line over here has completely held with no hope of falling, the entirety of the German Northern Army is crushed. And just like that, from the beginning of the war, after wiping them out, we may have lost 12,000 men, but the Germans have started off by losing 180,000. I mean, this was huge. If you can wipe out this northern army where they're going to position a lot of tank divisions in an effort to try and drive south in a wedge towards your capital, then this means that you're going to take out much of the German strength, weaken them greatly in the divisions, and now you can take these 24 divisions of bricks and you can throw them onto the front line, which is now looking significantly spongier as they've not been able to break through on any side. As you begin to take more and more of these pockets, you'll notice that your casualties are going to go up a little bit, but the Germans are just going to keep on climbing. In this case, we've killed almost 250,000 men, and it's barely been 2 months. Keep on repeating the process, the Germans are going to gradually lose more and more troops, and yet despite that, they're still going to follow the historical focus tree, and they're going to declare war on the Netherlands as well as Belgium, which in turn is going to take more of their units away from the defensive line. It's going to move them over towards the west, and this is going to cause them to be having to face a war on 2 fronts. Very quickly, the entire thing is going to collapse, and within around the year, you should be able to take Berlin and everything else by the beginning of 1940. And that just shows you how stupidly powerful these Space Marines are. The biggest weakness that these things have is that they can use a decent amount of fuel, especially the more and more that you pump out. And that's why these units are not useful in many circumstances. It is really only applicable if you have a large surplus of oil. For major powers, the Soviet Union is a great one that you could do a stupid amount of stuff with this. But if you are a miner and you're playing in the Axis like the Germans or the Italians, etc., you're not really going to be able to do this unless you are Romania. Which is why Poland taking the path of creating Poland-Romania for a kingdom for their focus tree is so powerful, because you get access to all of that sweet, sweet oil down here in Romania. It's also a really good strategy when playing in the Middle East, like Saudi Arabia, Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan, etc., because anything over here, you're going to have oil, but basically no other resources, so it's stupidly cheap and easy to make for the brick that you can just produce a large amount of. Notice, we put 1 factory on this brick tank that we were going to be producing about 2 months earlier, and instead of 2 a week, we're producing around 3.5 a week already, which means that just 1 mill factory dedicated to something like this with pretty high priority, and you were going to be able to produce a stupid amount of these with only 1 or 2 factories. But anyway, that is how you make the brick. I do hope that you enjoyed this video, and I hope you see how useful and powerful this thing can be. If there's any other tips or tricks that you want to know or need help on anything, then please do let me know. Other than that, I do hope you guys have a good rest of your day, and thank you for watching my content. I will see you all next time. Goodbye, guys.